Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I'm here today with my guest, and we are talking about a very important topic. We're going to talk today about grief-supportive workplace practices that support greater productivity. And I find this so interesting because I don't know how people support people that have had a loss. And I will be very interested to see what our guests say today. So I'm going to introduce them. We have here John Santoro, and I'll start with him. Hello, John.
Hello, Heidi. How are you?
Good, thank you. So John Santoro's daughter, Paula, died from the hidden effects of hyper-rare genetic syndrome. He has been very involved in the Compassionate Friends since Paula's death, serving on the National Board of Directors where he was board president, and serving as a trustee on the Compassionate Friends Foundation. As a result of his service, John received the prestigious Simon Stevens Award. John co-founded the Paula Rosina Santoro Foundation, which funds and advises community service projects in New Jersey. He currently serves on the faculty at NYU, where he was honored for his teaching excellence. Welcome again, John.
Thank you.
And next to John, we have Shari O'Laughlin. Shari is the Chief Executive Officer of the Compassionate Friends. Her 14-year-old son, Connor, was killed in a plane crash, and her sister died early in her life. Shari is the author of the book, Life from the Ashes, Finding Signs of Hope After Loss, and formerly served as Executive Director for the Children's Grief Center of New Mexico. She is a certified grief leadership coach and has developed corporate programs for supporting grief in the workplace and stewarding clients through grief. Welcome, Shari.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. And last but not least, Andy McNiel.
Hi, Heidi.
Hi, Andy. Andy is the Senior Advisor of Youth Programs at the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, also known as TAPS, and I'm on their advisory board and love that organization. He is a consultant and advisor for the Compassionate Friends and co-founder of the Satori Group, a national consulting firm focused on grief and loss. Andy is also a trainer for the American Foundation for Suicide and the co-author of Understanding and Supporting Bereaved Children, a practical guide for professionals. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Heidi. Glad to be here.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in. This is a topic that I don't know that much about, so I'm really interested and excited to hear from you all. When my brother died, I was 20, so I wasn't working, I was in school. But I have to say, I was in college, my professors did not support me. They did not understand it. They felt like I should have a week or two to get over it. And I felt so unsupported that I dropped out of college for 3 years. So I am very curious to know, why were you all interested in this topic? Because you came to me and said, let's do something on this topic. And how did you get interested? I'm going to start with John. How did you get interested in the idea of grief-supportive workplace practices?
Well, I think basically we all spend so much time at work. I mean, this is the area where we go for most of our days and where we have a lot of our strongest relationships. So one of the reasons I became interested in it was to, how do we capitalize this and how do we help people through this grief journey from the point of view that they have to go back to work, most of us, and they have to be productive and how can we make this a more positive situation for everyone. So. And
when your daughter died, you were working, I'm guessing.
I was, yes. I was with a company. I was with Pfizer, the drug company, and I had just started there, literally just a few weeks before. I was really grateful that they went the extra mile. They went beyond the call to help me out. The day that Paula died, one of the first calls I made was to my new boss, who was a wonderful manager, and I'm explaining to him what happened. And you go into this grief cycle, and all of a sudden, something happens, and you're just trying to get everything unloaded before you kind of fall apart. I called him. He was mowing his lawn on a Sunday, and he answered the phone, and I told him what happened, and he's crying on the other end. And I'm trying to unload all the projects I have. That's how I'm thinking at that point, But anyway, he told me the next day, look, just come back when you're ready. Take as much time off as you want. You're going to get paid, your benefits, you're all protected. And, when you feel like you want to come back, you come back. And I took 6 weeks, and I am really grateful for that. And I'm also I know that this was very unusual, especially that's against what people are facing right now.
And Shari, what about you?
So a little bit similarly, I was the chief operating officer for a startup technology company at the time that Connor was killed. And I had been there probably about 15 months. So I think, first of all, you know, as a bereaved mom, you know, you're just trying to eat, have water, remember to take a shower, try to figure out what to do with your kids. So big questions about, you know, how are you going to manage your work life? There's just no capacity. And as John said, some companies do a better job than others of helping someone return. And how they do that really makes a difference. So for me, my company did a couple things that were really valuable. One of them was, and this was really unusual, but one of the people working there used to be a social worker. And so she had a connection with someone in our community who ran a counseling center. And before I actually came back, that person came in to talk to everybody so that they could ask those questions that could be really offensive questions or really stupid questions without me there. So people are naturally going to have questions like, does she want to be asked about it? Does she not want to be asked about it? Are we going to make her cry if we acknowledge it? Do we ignore it? Is she going to be crying all the time? And what are we going to do when that happens? There just was a lot of those kinds of feelings. People were very supportive. They just didn't want to hurt me more. So one of the beneficial things about that is they got to talk about myths about grief and what's real and what's not. And not that there's any one formula for all of us, but just to talk through those questions so that when I got there, they weren't testing them all on me. And that was really a great thing. And then the second thing, similar to John, is I had a little bit more flexibility than I know everybody sometimes has. I did have to go back after about 5 weeks, which was very challenging. And for me, one of the things they did that was fantastic was I had a lot of external contacts. So, you know, getting new investors, selling the products of our company. And after my loss, I could not stand in front of people and sell those things. There was nothing inside of me that meant anything, but I could still be valuable to the company. So we actually switched my role much more to the internal operations and in essence retooled where I was into something new for the company. It benefited me because it gave me a role that was more conducive to where I was. And it actually benefited the company and grew us in a different way. And they brought in someone else to do those pieces. So
I love hearing this.
Yeah, that was a really creative way to do it.
Both you and John, and like you said, you didn't want to stand up and present, etc. And it reminds me of why I dropped out of college, because I had a public speaking class. My brother had only been dead 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was my turn and I told the professor, I'm not ready to do this. And he said, you have to. So you need to get up and do it. So I stood up and said, my public speech today is how I'm going to drop this class because my brother died 2 weeks ago and I'm supposed to be over it right now. So I'm actually dropping this class and dropping out of college.
Wow.
And I left. I left the room.
Yeah.
But, you know, he didn't have that kind of flexibility. So I love hearing the positive. What about you, Andy? Why is this a topic that is near and dear to your heart? Why did you want to do this show?
Yeah, so in my career, I've had the opportunity to sit with a lot of people who are bereaved. And I would say 95% of the time, the issue of workplace grief comes up. People either ask me as their therapist, they say, you know, when do I go back to work? Was a question I would always get.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, one of two things. When does your work want you to come back? Or when do you think you want to come back? Like there's not a set time for it. And then when people would go back to work, and Shari and John have positive experiences with their workplace, I would say 70% of the people would come back to me and they struggled with their workplace. They struggled because people didn't know what to say, didn't know how to react, but they would also struggle because their workplace policies were misguided and really created around misnomers about what grief is and how grief impacts people's lives. As Shari mentioned, there's a lot of myths about grief in our society. So for me, it really became about trying to educate workplaces on what is it that your employees are going through so that you can design policies that adequately reflect their experience. as opposed to creating policies that say, well, this is how you should be behaving or experiencing the workplace. So in John's case, his boss said, take the time that you need.
I love that.
And we're going to flex with that, and we're going to work with you. So it was more, why don't you help me understand what it is you're going through so that we can provide a workplace that's conducive to that. And in Shari's case, we're able to work something out so that Shari could go back to work. John ultimately could go back to work, because I also found in working with individuals that people at some point would say, well, if I'm not at work, what am I going to do with myself?
Right.
I'm just sitting at home, I'm ruminating, all of these things are just on me. And not that work is a distraction at all, because you take your grief everywhere that you go.
Yeah.
But at least I'm doing something with myself. I'm getting up, I'm going out, I'm changing my location, and the importance of being able to connect with a workplace.
Right.
So to me, it's an issue that's right at the heart of anyone who's bereaved. As John said, we spend most of our lives at work.
Completely.
Yeah.
And key relationships are
Right.
at work, so
Yeah.
it really matters how
Yeah.
that return goes.
Yeah. I'm wondering, John, for you, what you needed at work after Paula died. What helped you? What did you need?
Well, one of the things I needed, and it took a little while to get there, was professional help. I mean, a psychiatrist or a psychologist to help me through the grief, and thankfully my company had a very good EAP, and they organized it so that I was able to have that kind of professional help, and it was really great. So that was one of the things that they provided for me, and they got me, a person that could really get me through discussion and talking and so forth. Not to the extent that you had it, where they kind of prepared everybody for you coming back, but I think they did try to prepare people to a certain extent about how to, be sensitive to my needs and so forth. I was a speechwriter. I'm a speechwriter.
Yeah.
And I could work anywhere. I could work with a paper and pencil, but I basically could close my door and work. Even with all the help I got, for like the first 9 months, I had some days where I would just come in, close the door, turn on my computer, and almost be in a catatonic state, for the entire day. And then all of a sudden it'd be 5 o'clock and I would go home and I hadn't done anything. Well, thankfully I could meet my goals and so forth, but I just had that kinds of days sometimes, and I think the company was very responsible in making certain that I could cope with that. And so it started with professional help.
Yeah, I like this. And what about you, Shari?
I would say two things. One was flexibility, which wasn't the easiest, because I had a team in office, but I also had 2 daughters, raising bereaved daughters, and there were times when I needed to be at home more. I could work, but I needed to do it from home for whatever reason with their schedules, or they had a greater need.
One of the things that's really important here is that if a company treats an employee right and does what they can to help the employee through the readjustment and reacclimation to work, they get a very loyal, very productive employee.
Yes.
I mean, I am still amazed what Pfizer did for me, and I realize how lucky I was, because I've talked to a lot of people who were told to get back to work in 5 days or 3 days or no days. I mean, it's just incredible what's out there. So, it's I don't want to call it a winning situation, because it's a tough situation to go through, but there's a place you can get to, and when you get to that place, the employee is exceptionally productive, more productive, I think, than the others expect them to be when they finally get through it, and also exceptionally committed to the company and to its mission.
Yeah.
Well, and John, you're alluding to, and we'll probably, this will come up throughout it, and that is, as people are going through their grief and they're coming back into the workplace, it's the workplace being patient as this transformation is happening in a person's life. Grief is hugely disruptive, and who I was in the world even my values, how I see the world, how I understand myself, my sense of meaning and purpose, all of those things are things that are shifting in our lives. And as that happens, there's this transformation that happens where you find yourself in a new place with a new understanding of the world. And I've talked to people who say, you know, I would give anything to have my person back. You know, don't get me wrong. I also found that there were things about who I am as a person that I like better now than I even before my person died. And so to your point, you know, if workplaces can support people in the way that they need support, be patient as people go through their grief and their life is transformed as a result of it, you could have an employee that is hugely loyal to your company and someone who has a deepness and a richness to the way they see the world, the way they encounter others, the way they treat other people, and it really makes a better workplace ultimately.
Yes.
But it does start back with how we treat our employees. I've had plenty of people who explained very different than the two of you that they couldn't stay at their place because they were not supported. They were actually offended by the way the workplace, you know, treated them, and they left that workplace, and that workplace, you know, was really never able to find another deep, rich human being like that person. You know?
I like this. So it leads me into this. What are some of the things, and I'm just going to put it out there for all of you, that employers should not do after someone has had a loss in the workplace and they come back to work? What should not be happening?
I'll start with one thing.
I like it.
You don't put people on 90-day reviews because they're not meeting their quota or they're not doing what you believe their job to be immediately when they come back into the workplace. You recognize that something significant is happening in this person's life, and it's different than any other workplace challenge that you would ever face, because it is a life disruption and a major life transition. And because of that, we can't use the same HR approaches that are sort of like strong arm people back into their job. We have to do it with understanding and care, and really create a new paradigm for how we interact with people in the workplace. So I would start there. Stop the 90-day reviews and putting people extra pressure on someone who already is carrying this huge burden and this extra pressure that they didn't ask for.
Right. I like that.
I would add avoid assumptions and increase communication, because we have a lot of assumptions, right? We assume that if we bring it up, we're going to upset the person, or we assume they can't do their job anymore because they're grieving, or you know, they don't want to be. There's a lot of assumptions, or that they're just as capable as they were the day before it happened, right? Which is an impossibility. And so I found just the increased communication. Ask. Some people going back do want to talk about it. It's helpful for them. Some don't want to talk about it much. Some want to dive into work as just something else to move them forward, something they can control. Some need a reassignment of things because what they were doing before doesn't fit. And it benefits everybody to just reduce those assumptions and have communication. Ask. You know, ask in general, lightly, kindly. Is it okay if I ask how, bring up the person's name or ask how your day is going? Or would you prefer I not? And let that person tell you and be open to, to hearing what works best for them and be respectful of that.
And those preferences might change week to week.
Yes.
That's correct.
You know, I emphasize or re-emphasize what they've said. I think one of the things, and your point about avoiding stereotypes, and I remember somebody came to me after I came back and said, make sure you work on your marriage because 85% of marriages end because after the death of a child, which was a myth. And it was actually a myth that
Yeah.
Yep.
TCF helped explode,
Yeah.
over with its own research, and there was all kinds of stereotypes like that, and where people would come and try to compare some grief experience they had
Yes.
to yours, which is, could be notable and true, but because you had some loss of some sort, it may not equate to the loss that we're all have endured. So
Yeah. I like that. So what is the first thing an employer should do when a person first steps back into the office and they've had a loss? Is there something that they should be doing right from the get-go?
Yeah, I think having just a conversation that's open.
Okay.
And if the supervisor or boss of that person isn't very good at it, have somebody else do it, because it will derail fast. But just asking questions like, are you feeling ready to come back to work
Yeah.
at the same hours, in the same capacity? What can we do that would be helpful for you? And the person may not have answers, but they may. And they may be able to say, I want to be back at work, but I need to do a little bit from home, or I need whatever that is that's going to be different. And really make sure they know the resources that can be, you mentioned the EAP program, make sure they know about organizations and resources, if they don't, that they can use that would help them. If it's okay with somebody in the company who may have had a similar loss and they've given permission, share. There's a couple people here that may be helpful to talk to if you ever find that would be helpful, and I can share that with you. Share that you're open, as the supervisor, to having conversations. Please let me know if something's not working. Please let me know if there's something we can do better about this. I care, and we'd like to be supportive of you.
I like this. I like the idea that don't make assumptions and feel like you know what this person needs or wants.
Yes.
You need to talk to them because everybody's different. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on this?
I would try maybe to give them an adjustment period before you're engaging them in lots of meetings, and let them come back and get their feet wet, so to speak. I think that would be really important. One of the good things is that work from home is now much more normalized than it was when I had my loss and you had yours.
Yes.
The idea that you can actually work from home and be productive, and you can have this hybrid, sometimes being in the office and otherwise sometimes working at home, is really a positive step, and should be capitalized on, especially when you're coming back and being reintegrated into the workforce.
Yeah, I like that.
I think so. And I would say, too, with a workplace, I think one of the most significant things that a workplace can do for people who are coming back in is to, as Shari said, you want to have a conversation and you want to see what their needs are. But sometimes people may not know what those are. So it's okay to make suggestions, to say, here's some options, and we want to make these available to you. Do your research, talk to someone who's been through it, who maybe is a little further along, and they may have a little more insight to say, man, I wish when I came back this would have happened, or this would have happened, or this would have happened, and then create some options. Because sometimes when you're early in your grief, your brain is just not operating optimally, and it's hard to even know what you need. It's an entirely new language. You don't even really know how to describe what it is that's happening in your life and to you. So I think doing a little bit of research ahead of time, coming up with some options, presenting those options to a person can be tremendously helpful to them. And then I'll add one more thing, and that is peer support works.
Yeah.
So if you can do a little research and find out what organizations are in your area. The Compassionate Friends has chapters all over the United States, in every state, and look to see if there is support local, and share that information. Don't assume that your employee coming back knows that's there and available to them. Counseling is helpful, therapy is helpful, peer support is tremendously helpful because it validates the experience that you're going through. You're with people who get it, and they can help you learn that language and learn how to walk in that space.
Absolutely. And as you know, Andy, the research supports that.
Yeah.
It shows that peer support and adaptive coping skills are the two things that help us most after a loss. And the Compassionate Friends was a godsend for me.
Yeah.
Because I finally were around people that understood what it was like to lose a sibling. So, quickly, where do we find you? We're wrapping up. John?
Well, it's been 25 years since Paula died. We've moved onto a new place, so to speak, but she's always in our mind, and I'm always mindful of how people reacted to our grief around us, and thankful for those who understood what the grief was going to be about and helped me through it.
And if people need to locate you, where do we find you?
You can find me at jpsantoro@aol.com.
Wonderful.
I'm the last of the AOL people.
I love it. Shari?
At the Compassionate Friends, you can certainly find me. I'm also involved with New York Life Foundation's Grief Supportive Workplace project.
Wonderful.
And we are actually rolling out this information that is free to employers of any size, anywhere, that they can learn more about it. It'll be on New York Life's website as well as the Compassionate Friends website, so lots of free resources there. And I can be reached also at Shari O'Laughlin@gmail.com.
Great. And Andy?
You can reach me at andy.mcniel, and it's McNiel, McNiel, at the satorigroup.org. You can also find me at andy@compassionatefriends.org, and you can find me at andy.mcniel@taps.org. Really, any of those places.
Okay, and Shari, give me the New York Life again. Give me what you're doing. I know that Andy and you are working together on this.
Yes, the Compassionate Friends had an opportunity to work with a grant through the New York Life Foundation, and they funded an actual grief supportive workplace program. And so many of us contributed. John was on there as well, offering his story, to really look at, first of all, what are policies that companies should have in place to make a grief supportive workplace? What's the business case for support for that? Why does that matter? How does it help a company? And then it's a full program for any company that wants to use it. And any size, anywhere, it's not for them to make a profit. They just want to increase the number of grief supportive workplaces. Because as we said, it makes such a difference in people's lives, and it's a big part of the journey forward after a loss of any kind.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for educating me. This was a really important show today, and I just want to remind people, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.